Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I'm your host, Maryann Petri, and there's a non-denominational retreat weekend at the Resolution Center of Jacksonville, Florida, and it will be a time of support and renewal for parents and grandparents on the journey of parental alienation, standing strong in resilience, paving the way for good health and a great future. This will take place on April 22nd through the 24th of 2022 at the Resolution Center at Jacksonville, Florida. I will leave notes in the podcast notes. I've got a brand new guest. Her name is Judith M. Weigle. Judith M. Weigle has been a mediator for 11 years, a legal document assistant for 10 years, and in private practice family law for 10 years. Her company, Divorce Resource Incorporated, provides both mediation and filing services for divorces, legal separations, paternity cases, and post-judgment revisions of settlement agreements. Weigle's mediation experiences include divorce and family mediation, community and personal mediation with the Dispute Resolution Program at the Office of the Los Angeles City Attorney, and Mediator and Arbitrator with the Los Angeles County Bar Attorney-Client Fee Dispute Program. When she was with the Dispute Resolution Program in 2010, Ms. Weigle won a coveted Community Mediation Award that for a police community. Oh my goodness.
You want me to say it? I say it all the time. Here, I'll fill in the blank. You're doing great, though.
Oh,
So it was a police community dialogue facilitation as a result of an unfortunate shooting in a specific community of non-English speaking people.
Oh, there it is. Thank you so much.
It's a lot to say, Maryann. It's a lot.
Oh my goodness. Well, Judith Weigle is also the host of the Amicable Divorce Expert podcast, formerly Constructive Uncoupling. Judith promotes amicable divorces through her work as a divorce mediator and through the guests on her show from judges, lawyers, therapists, mediators, authors, and people who have been through their own divorce and can share their experiences for the best divorce possible. Now, her philosophy is be honest and authentic, speak from the heart, and take responsibility for your actions. And I welcome you to the show, Judith Weigle. How are you?
I am just great, Maryann. I'm really happy to be on your show because I love it. I really love it. I've listened to several episodes, and what you're doing for the community at large, America, is wonderful, because so much has to be done to overhaul the legal industry.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say they try their best, but there's a lot that needs to change. So thank you for the work that you're doing.
And I thank you too as well. You know, when you're working with all these divorces and mediation, I'm sure that is stressful. You know, how did you come about getting into this?
You know, Maryann, the universe has a way of pushing us in directions that we never thought about. I was always in the entertainment industry. I loved the entertainment industry. The only year I was a performer was the year I was with the Clyde Beatty Cole Brothers Circus as a dancing bear. Otherwise, I have been behind the scenes, production, marketing, touring. There was a point back in the early 2000s, around 2005, 2006, where two different female attorneys came to me and said, you know, you have a very interesting personality for mediation. You should think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Never knew what it was. Loved the entertainment industry, did nothing.
Mm-hmm.
The third person who approached me on this, I said, okay, 3 is a charm. Something's going on here. I think I should pay attention. And at that time, I was wanting a change. That person actually was the former owner of the business I have, Divorce Resource Incorporated.
Okay.
So, you know, I said, okay, tell me what to do. She's the one that told me to go to the city attorney's office downtown, dispute resolution program. They'll tell you and train you about mediation. And I must tell you, it just was wonderful. The second I walked into that classroom, the second I got on the phone at the city attorney's office and started fielding calls from Los Angeles County residents to bring their disputes, community, business, neighbor, whatever it was, to the dispute resolution program, I just enjoyed myself completely. On the one hand, I said, oh my God, this is problem solving. I love creative problem solving. On the other hand, I said, what I listened to on the phone, my first day at the city attorney's office after all the training was done, I said, I'm amazed the world functions as well as it does. People are always in dispute. And people don't know how to handle their disputes. You know, we get so emotional. Everybody listening to this, including yourself, we all have been there. Something will happen. It will get us emotionally charged. We'll feel defensive and threatened. And we don't know how to communicate all of a sudden. We lose it. And we go for aggressiveness instead of, let's take a breath. Let's figure out what this is about. Let's see how to communicate in a way that calms everything down, and let's see where the compromise is. That's what mediation is. It's really that simple.
It is. Now, as far as like with mediation, what do you do? Like, do you do co-parenting mediation? Oh, okay. So what do you do when you have a co-parent that is not behaving appropriately? They may act aggressive in your office. How do you handle things like that?
Depending on how aggressive, I will either take them from both being in the same room to splitting them up to 2 different rooms, just to get that energy separated. And then things tend to calm down when you separate people. And then I can talk one-on-one with each person and just say, so what's triggering you? Tell me so I know how to work with you on this and possibly bring your statements, your ideas, your proposals back to your other spouse. So that's the easiest way of doing it. But Maryann, once in a while, people just aren't ready to mediate. They think they are, but they're just not calm enough. They haven't worked through their emotions enough. And so on those rare occasions where I have to say, I think it's best to end today, and let's circle back in a little bit, calm down, think of what's triggering you, and then we can reconvene. So those are the 2 ways I handle it.
You know, what do you do if this co-parent counseling, say, is court ordered, and you have a parent that, if you point out reality, they just stand up and walk out?
I can't point out reality. See, that's the difficulty in mediation. And it is the most difficult thing I've ever done. And I thought I had hard jobs before. This is the hardest job in the world, because you're dealing with people at their rawest. You're dealing with people that are transitioning in their life. And this is about money as well as this whole rebranding of your life. So court ordered. Okay, if it's court ordered, they have 2 choices. They can either use a court mediator who will be at the courthouse. Typically, at least in California, it's this way. And being at the courthouse makes you behave in different ways. You are on your better behavior when you're at the courthouse, generally, aren't you?
Yeah.
From one who has seen the inside of a courthouse, people know parts of your story, right? And why you're even doing this podcast. Okay. But if they're in my office, first of all, the mediator's role is to facilitate dialogue between the parties and to listen to what each party is saying, because when you're emotional, you're only half hearing the person who's talking to you. You're really running your own story in your head, so that as soon as it's your time to talk, you're off and running, you're out the gate. And so you're really not listening because you're too emotional to listen. So it's my role to establish just an atmosphere of calm. That's one of my jobs. And just the way I talk, the way I posture myself, the way I open the mediation, set the ground rules, set the attitude. That in and of itself should be helpful. But then things get a little out of control. People tell their stories, people start negotiating, and they go back into their old patterns, their old aggressive patterns of talking. So at that point, then I have to stop and say, let's just take a breath.
Mm-hmm.
We're all going to get a time to talk. Let's just listen hard without interrupting, because what you're not used to, I explain,
Mm-hmm.
is listening without interrupting. And when you can get yourself to the point of listening without interrupting, you will hear things you've never heard before, and they may be very beneficial to a settlement or to compromising with you. But because we interrupt, I mean, I'm guilty sometimes. I have to pull myself back. If I'm on the hot seat in some situation, no, Judy, put your mediator hat on. What do you tell everybody else to do? You got to do this now. I have to let each spouse say what they see as reality.
Mm-hmm.
Because that is what the reality is. It's not what I see, it's what they see.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just have to maneuver the conversation in a way that they have this meeting of the minds. So for instance, when I'm dealing with co-parenting issues and they're trying to work out their schedule, depending on the emotional level and their ability to complete sentences or allow sentences to be completed, I'm listening for where the compromise points are. And there are points where I say, wait a minute, did you both hear that you're agreeing on something? You're just using different words, but here's where your agreement point is. And they look at me like, really? You heard that? Yes, I really heard that. Are you okay with that? Well, if that's what each other said, yeah, this is what we want. It's fascinating, Maryann, that communication is fascinating.
Oh, it sure is. And people should listen, as you said earlier, listen and then speak and understand what the other person is saying instead of rushing in and just maybe misinterpreting what they were saying.
Yep. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So sometimes splitting them apart is healthy because I just let them run on. You know, we're one-on-one in the room. I do say we'll be back in 15 minutes or I'll be back in 15 minutes, and just let them say it. Just let them get out what they need to get out, because once that gets out, then they're able to say, okay, let's talk. Let's compromise. Let's negotiate. Now, each person may have deal breakers, and most do. You know what? I can do this, but I really can't do that. Okay, let's work with what you can do then, and see how we can work around what you can't do. So it's a lot of that. It's a lot of taking their words and restating what they say. That is another value in putting people in different rooms, is the same message can be communicated in a different way to make the other person open to what you would like. So sometimes it's just the words we choose, the energy behind our words, the attitude behind our words. Okay, can I talk now? Are you done yet? Okay, that does not feel good. And that happens a lot. And that's my job. My job is to know when to say, okay, I think we have the message. Can we just switch over to the other person now? Because there's a point with some people where they just don't know when to end.
Right.
And so that's what a mediator has to do, is kind of rein people in so they can express what they need to express, but you don't have to, you don't have to repeat it 3 times.
You know, I'm sure when you schedule another meeting, you probably tell people to make a list of what they want to talk about at the next meeting.
Correct. I do. So what I do is, and what every good mediator does, is you have mediation notes. So the mediator is constantly taking notes throughout the mediation time. And by the next day, we should be giving them back the notes, you know, organizing it in topic points.
Mhm.
Child custody, this is what was discussed. Child support, this is what was discussed. And whatever else we discussed. Does this comport with your memory? If that doesn't happen, people can easily forget, or they can skew things differently in their heads innocently,
Mhm.
because you know that old game of telephone. You can't even sit next to a series of people and repeat the exact message the same way.
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
just don't do that. We always add in our own personality or our own flavor to what was said. And
Mhm.
so every good mediator will do mediation notes by 24 hours later and insist that they respond, because responding is important. Responding means that they've read it, and I
Mhm.
want them to say yes or no. Does this comport? If it doesn't comport, tell me how you remember it.
Mhm.
Because mediation happens between mediation appointments too. You know,
Mhm.
people will want to just write little emails and say, well, I would like to propose this. Okay, wait till the next mediation.
Mhm.
I don't, oh, this is a good point. I do not conduct mediations in emails. And there's a very specific, two specific reasons for it. First of all, mediation is confidential.
Mhm.
Once you put something in an email, a discussion, a negotiation, it can be sent anywhere. I don't want it to be sent anywhere. At least I don't want what I say to be sent anywhere.
Right.
And the other thing is, oh, it can be changed.
Mhm.
So when you forward an email out, you can literally change what you're forwarding.
Mhm.
And I don't want to give that kind of opportunity to anybody. So that's why when I see that people are email fighting, or
Mhm.
email negotiating, I just say, let's save this for mediation. It
Mhm.
took me a year or two to understand you do not, as a mediator, engage in email fighting or email negotiation.
Mhm.
Now, there will be some mediators out there that will say, no, 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 I do very well at email mediation. Okay, well, wait till it blows up in your face
Mhm.
sometimes, because I think it's, you're saying, yes, have you experienced something negative coming out of an email, an attempt to mediate an email ever?
No, we did have a co-parent counselor, but nothing was ever I had I really didn't have a need to email her because I would just wait till the next meeting.
Okay, that's good. That's
Mhm.
good. How did you like mediation?
I thought it was helpful. Um, it just if the other party would I don't know how to say this, be more open to it, it probably could have helped a lot with what was gonna happen next as far as the court process.
I get it. I
Mhm.
get it. The best mediations, of course, are when both people are interested in
Mhm.
using the mediation wisely and for a productive end. And
Mhm.
I know you can't force people to want that. And
Mhm.
you probably had court ordered mediation, Maryann?
No, these attorneys got together, in a boardroom table with myself and, um, 2 other psychologists, and they were just ordering it themselves. I mean, I never knew co-parenting counseling existed until all this was happening.
You had people in the room that
Mhm.
kind of took charge of your life and your
Mhm.
decisions.
Attorneys. Mhm.
Interesting.
Mhm.
How do they feel? Geez, how did you handle yourself?
Well, I just sat back and I thought, well, okay, I'll give this a shot. I'm open to talk to this person. She seems nice. I was concerned about what was going to happen to the kids. And unfortunately, when you are working with a high conflict personality disorder, this still is not going to end well.
Right, right. I understand. I do understand.
Mhm,
The courts really aren't set up to deal with any type of, mental health challenges or
mhm,
personality disorders, as we call them,
Mhm.
are just not set up for that.
Mm-mm.
And I don't know how you get around it. I don't have an answer for that right
Mhm.
now, to be honest with you, except through mediation. But mediation that that supports the parties themselves
Mhm.
talking and making decisions and listening, and through mediators listening correctly, that's how we're able to guide the negotiation forward.
Mhm.
But you really have to listen. And I I don't think there's a way of restricting
Mhm.
time with the children with each parent. I don't know that there's an opportunity to do that. It, it's some, unless you're going to have an evaluator come on board, and that's like,
Mm.
well, that's crazy land. If you
Mhm.
have to have it, you have to have it. But oh my God, strap in for the financial and
Oh,
emotional ride of your life,
and
and
that's
it'll change your life.
right, and that's why you're better off with a mediator, and if you could fix whatever you can with mediation and stay out of the courtroom, that's the ticket.
That is the ticket. That really is. And judges love you not coming to the courtroom.
Yeah.
It's so funny. It's like this hidden little secret, in at least in family law. The less busy they are, the better.
Mhm.
Or they only want to be there for like the emergencies, the ex
Mhm.
partes, the we got to deal with this right now because there's a danger arising. But the other garden variety disputes in family law, like working out the co-parenting schedule, or dividing assets and debts, that's they'd like you to do that on your own. I
Mhm.
think they just want to come in and do the emergency stuff,
Mhm.
the elongated cases
Oh.
where you have all the evaluators and the minors council and they're this and the that. It's like, oh my, where's reality in all of
Mm.
this? And you know yourself from not only your own life, but having so many great guests on your show, that people unfortunately don't tell the truth.
Mm.
Wouldn't it be nice if everybody told the truth, but they don't?
Mm-mm.
And just to have to get around that, to have to defend an accusation made about you that is truly not unfounded, truly not real.
Mhm.
Oh my God,
Mhm.
that's a hell of its own making.
Mm. Definitely. And
Dang.
so
Go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say some parents go through, like criminal charges that are falsely accused of, and I just feel so bad for those people because they have to have a criminal trial, and then they have to go into family court. So
Yes.
it's just terrible.
It's terrible. I had to, this is funny. I had to go to urgent care last year because I was having a high blood pressure issue
Oh, no.
to the point where I really needed to go to urgent care. The doctor, the female doctor who attended me there, and it was a phenomenal facility. The female doctor who attended me said, "Well, what do you do for a living?" And I said, "Oh, I'm in divorce. I'm a family law mediator and paralegal." She said, "Oh my gosh. May I tell you about my divorce?" I mean, this opens the door. It's such a conversation starter. And she said she had a very tough divorce. She had one minor child. She made more money than her husband. She was a doctor.
Mm.
And he did have issues,
Mm.
she undiagnosed, but yes, this is what she said, he had issues. Okay, so he was difficult to deal with. They both had attorneys and the clock was ticking on the money. It was, growing. And so she said, okay, this is nuts. I need to take control. So she said to her attorney, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to simply ask him what he wants to end this.
Mhm.
Just
Mhm.
want to know what he wants. She said, all I want is my daughter.
Mhm.
Whatever else he wants is fine. And so that was the proposal back. And he was a little incredulous. He said, really? She said, yes, just tell me what you want to end this. And he gave her a list of assets, money, all of that. None of it included seeing the daughter.
Mm.
Isn't that interesting? None of it
Mhm.
included full custody. Just, it was all about money. And she said, okay. And it was a healthy request. And he said, really? Okay, well, I want a trip to Hawaii. And she said, okay, is that it? Would that make you happy? He said, yes. She said, done, we'll write it up. That's how it ended. That taught me a lesson
Mhm.
that I started to share in the appropriate, with the appropriate couple, to say, divorce is an issue of compromise.
Mhm.
That's really where it is. You can quote the law all day long, but unless you want to go to trial and have a judge make the decisions for you, you have to get down to, what do you need to get out of this? What does he need to get out of this?
Mhm.
And what she needed to get out of it was, she just wanted to be the primary parent. If her
Mhm.
daughter wanted to see the father, that was fine.
Mhm.
She wasn't going to prevent it. I don't think she was afraid of letting her daughter with her dad.
Mhm.
But I don't think that it didn't sound like the dad was very interested in being with the daughter as much as he was interested in the money.
Mhm.
So she said, here, take the money. I can always earn more money.
Mhm.
I
Well,
thought that was amazing.
true, true, and also kind of on a sad note because it was just about the money.
It was just about the money. Yeah. Yeah. And so, early on in the first couple years of this business, I was doing a mediation between parents. They had one child. I think the child was 8. And he had no issue paying child support at all. He didn't want co-parenting time. And he realized the less time he had, the more he would pay. He didn't care. And so at one point I said, look, I'm just going to ask a question, and I'm sorry, I apologize. I don't mean to offend you, but I'm motivated to ask you, and I'm talking to Dad, did you want to be a father? Did you want to have children? He said, I appreciate the question, and the answer is no.
Mhm.
I didn't want to be a dad. I didn't want to have children. What was going on in our relationship was, it wasn't working.
Mhm.
And she wanted to have a child thinking that the relationship would work. Maryann, this is just so wrong.
Mm.
Having a child will not make a relationship better. It will challenge it even more than the way it is challenged now, because in a good marriage, having children challenges the relationship because it's so incredibly difficult to be a parent.
Mhm.
More than we've all been kids, right? So
Mhm.
we know what it's like to be a kid. Sometimes we had good upbringings, others of us have had really tough upbringings. But we know what it's like to be a kid, and we have friends who used to be kids. We got
Mhm.
that. But nobody knows what it's like to be a parent until you're there.
Mhm. Mhm.
So when you have children, boy, oh boy, are you tested. So when this gentleman shared with me, no, and it didn't make the relationship better. Look, we're in your office.
Oh.
And he said, I'm willing to pay whatever I have to pay, but this is the only time I want. Okay, yes, it was like a knife in my heart when I was listening to this, because I was thinking of the child,
Mhm. Mhm.
because every child wants both parents.
Mhm.
They want as much access to both parents. And that was really tough to listen to. But what's the flip side of that?
Mhm.
The flip side of that is, okay, you're forced to have your child on X number of days, and you don't want to do anything with him or her.
Mhm.
You let them watch TV, do something else while you're doing something else. I mean, it's
Mhm.
obvious to a child that you don't want to spend time with them. And then what's the child supposed to do? Spend their lives trying to win back their parents' favor? This has got to be the toughest position for the other parent to be in.
Mhm.
How do you deal with your child now? How do you explain to your child why they're
Mhm.
not spending a lot of time with the other parent when you're willing to give that time to the other parent? So
Mhm.
please, people, anybody listening, if you're thinking about having more children and
Mhm.
it's not working with the number you have, don't.
Mhm.
And do the best you can at just being the best parent you can
Mhm.
if you're the primary parent. And don't talk negatively about the other parent. Be supportive.
Mhm.
It's going to be tough
Definitely.
to do, but yeah, you got to be supportive.
Well, I remember watching an Oprah segment, and she said, if the person says, "No, I don't want kids," they mean they don't want kids. Don't think you're gonna change them into thinking they're gonna want kids later.
No truer words, because also Oprah had on her show the poet laureate Maya Angelou.
Mhm.
And I just used a Maya quote this week in my own podcast, and it was, when someone tells you who they are, believe them the first time.
Yes. Yes.
She used that quote a lot. Oprah used that quote a lot. And I keep thinking, because you know what we do when we even go to marry somebody, they may show us who they are in both a good and negative way, and we kind of want to brush away the negative.
Mhm.
Pay attention to it. I mean, none of us are perfect. We all have our issues,
Mhm.
but I'm talking about game-changing issues. I'm talking about giant red flags that
Mhm.
are only going to get worse once the courting stage is over.
Mhm.
So, right, when somebody tells you they don't want to have kids, and you really want them, you have to move on. You have
Mhm.
to live your life the way you want to, and you can't put your soon to be child
Mhm.
in harm's way by exposing them to a parent that is just not going to be a great parent.
Mhm. You know, I've talked to a lot of parents, and they have said, "Well, I didn't know the red flags." They don't know what a personality disorder is, and people, young people, even today, I'll I'll talk to a young person and say, "Do you know what a high functioning borderline personality disorder is? Do you know what a narcissist personality disorder is?" And they'll say, "Well, no, well, kind of." And it's like, I think if these young people were educated on these issues, bipolar, borderline, narcissist, these high functioning ones. y-
Or even, I agree with you on all of that. And
Mhm.
additionally, just just behavioral issues outside
Mhm.
of all of that that aren't good for you,
Right.
that don't really support you and make you happy. So I think that our guts, our stomachs are our guides. So
Mhm.
you know when it doesn't feel good to be treated a certain way.
Mhm.
You know when you feel nervous or tense and butterflies, and
Mhm.
you're confused maybe about why somebody did something to you, said something, treated you a certain way.
Mhm.
Those are red flags. Even
Mhm.
if you don't know how to recognize behavior patterns that may fall into personality disorders,
Mhm.
you at least know when you don't feel good.
Mhm.
And you can't make excuses for not feeling good.
Mhm.
You have to say, oh, wait a minute, that didn't make me feel good.
Mhm.
Now, why did this happen? What would have made me feel good? What were we talking about? You really have to start analyzing behavior, because it's only going to get worse once you get married.
Mhm.
It really is. Because
Mhm.
once you get married, you're not on your best behavior anymore,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
Women, we may eat carbs. We
Right.
may go from not eating carbs while we're dating to eating carbs once we get married. And then, with men, the hunt is over,
Mhm.
because they're the hunters, right?
Mhm.
And they hunt the relationship. So when the hunt is over, they're not on their best behavior either. Maybe they want to go back out with the boys, or you know what? And I keep referring to this in a heterosexual context. And, we all have to be mindful that we now have, same-sex marriages.
Mhm.
And I do believe, even in same-sex marriages, you have somebody that's more alpha than the other. So
Mhm.
that alpha person may be the hunter,
Mhm.
in this dynamic, and the other one being the one chased. So
Mhm.
I still think we have that dynamic even in same-sex marriages.
Mhm.
But listen, this happened. A gal walked in my office years ago, beautiful young 20-year-old, second marriage.
Mm.
Young 20-year-old, second marriage. Now she was gorgeous. She looked like a catch. Good upbringing looked
Mhm.
like. Her mother came with her. I liked her mother.
Mhm.
Um, and about, oh shoot, a half an hour or an hour before the ceremony started, he punched her in the stomach. The groom punched her in the stomach. What do you do then? You're at the hotel. Well, this took place at one of the major hotels, the Beverly Hills Hotel. Very expensive.
Mhm.
100+ guests. I mean, that's a small party at the Beverly Hills. Up to 300 is a normal party. What do you do? And that was the second time that had happened to her.
Oh, no.
Mhm. Mhm. So that couldn't have been, and I can't remember all of uh, the rest of the story. I just remembered that, but I think there were red flags. I think there was anger management stuff going on that revealed its stuff in the planning of the wedding. And I forgot about this. Before I went into family law, I said I was in the entertainment industry. In Los Angeles, producing entertainment for private events is an enormously lucrative business, and that's what I did. So I used to go to a lot of weddings. And when I would get couples in the office planning the wedding and planning the entertainment, I could tell you who was going to be divorced by
Mm.
the way they communicated with each other
Mm.
in the planning stages. I could tell you exactly who was going to be divorced in a couple of years. And I was almost right with every couple because I would get them back in a few years on another marriage.
Mhm.
And then I would say, well, how long did the first one last?
Oh my
Because they
goodness.
always want to give you the recap. But communication um, in the courting stage is really important. How do you communicate? Do
Mhm.
you feel comfortable communicating? Do you feel heard?
Mhm.
Is your soon to be spouse writing you off as silly? Oh, come
Mhm.
on, that's nothing. You,
Mhm.
you really have to pay attention to things like that
Mhm.
because it's going to get worse. Or did you spend a lot of time communicating so that when things happen, and they will happen, you both have kind of a process that you go through to deal with something
Mhm.
important. Communication
Right.
is tough and important.
Mhm. And I think a lot of young people, even in their 20s, mid-20s, even late 20s, they may have such a nice upbringing with a normal family, but when they come across these high-functioning personality disorders, they may say, "Well, maybe they're just nervous before the wedding, and that's why they talk to me like that." And that person may call them up and say, "Gee, I'm sorry I said that. Let's just start over." And so then that person, accepts their apology, and it just keeps happening over and over.
That is a red
Mhm.
flag.
Mhm.
The fact that it happens more than once or once at all is a
Mhm.
red flag. Yeah, you nailed a really, really good example. So there's a gentleman, I don't know if anybody has brought his name up on the program, but there's a gentleman named Bill Eddy, Eddy. Do you know
Mhm.
who I'm talking about,
Yes,
Maryann?
yep.
Yeah. So he wrote what, 26, 28 books on personality disorders, but he also wrote a book on dating radar
Mm.
and how to notice personality disorders while you're dating. So there is a little bit of it. So that's a great book. That's something people could get. Dating Radar by Bill Eddy.
That and also maybe that should be put into the classrooms for, maybe sophomore to junior year in high school.
When people start dating.
Right.
That's
Catch
not
it.
a that's not a bad idea.
catch it while they still have spongy brains and can read something and get it. Hopefully they get it.
Yes, and your setup example was really good though, because okay, people come from really good families that treat each other well,
Mm-hmm.
and then they meet these high functioning personality disorder people, and they don't know what to do with them. I mean, you never had this growing up. One of the traits that Bill talks about a lot is love bombing.
Mm-hmm.
This is when love bombing is when it's way too soon. Attention, 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 roses. Oh my God, I can't believe I met you. Let's get married. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's too much too soon. Stop, because it's not healthy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've also heard of, though, on the other side of this, we've heard of, you know, people who met and have 50-year marriages. And I just knew when she or he walked in the room that this was the person for us. But it wasn't love bombing. It was still that gentle process of getting to know somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And allowing your relationship to breathe. There's no rush to make a commitment. It's that rush to make a commitment that you need to pay attention to.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no reason to rush to make a commitment unless somebody's going off to war. Man, I hate
Yeah.
war. I mean, I even hate using this as an example, but it's an
Right.
old example to use. You know, and maybe you're pregnant. I don't know that there's any reason to get married
Mm-hmm.
now
Right.
after meeting somebody last week.
Mm-hmm.
No, you need to breathe. You need life experiences together to see how you both react. And then you'll know who you're marrying, hopefully.
Definitely. Well, yeah, you hope it. You know, some people hide their personality disorder traits very carefully. They're very calculated. Some of these people are really good, and you've got these nice people that fall prey to this, and then it's too late. You've got possibly 2 kids, and they just set out turning the kids against the target parent.
Yes, 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 and yes. So parental alienation
Mm-hmm.
is a huge topic. And if you are married to somebody that has a mental health challenge, you probably will experience parental alienation in a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And for anybody who doesn't know it, it's one parent speaking so negatively about the other parent that the kids don't want to be around the other parent.
Mm-hmm.
That's what parental alienation is, and it's horrible. Now, if the other parent has substance abuse issues, you still don't turn them your children against them. You know, you hope that other parent gets help before you can have the children with them on their own, for the safety of the kids, of course. But that's not even a reason to turn the kids against them. I mean, substance abuse issues are a result of many different things. And I'm hard pressed to blame anybody who has a substance abuse issue, because you would think that it would be normal to get help for it. But when you're in it, your brain is mixed up.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, just acknowledging that you need help is hard to do. What do you mean? I can stop this anytime I want. I'm going through an emotional period. I kind of need to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's not hurting anybody, depending on what the substance abuse is, gambling. It's not hurting anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, it actually is, because you're spending money that could be spent on the health and welfare of the family.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So, yeah.
You know, what do you think of, third-party interventions? I think, when you have people that are co-parenting decently and say they meet a boyfriend or a girlfriend and then they start chirping in their ear, you should be doing this. That person has more time than you. You should be doing that. I wish people could just, when I met my current husband, I said, I will handle the discipline. If you have a problem, come to me. I will discipline them. And he basically that's how we did it. And also he worked out of town a lot, so lucky him. But but I had really good kids though. I mean, I had kids that actually fought over the lawnmower. How many kids do that?
Oh, that's so funny. What, were you paying allowance? Is that why they fought over the lawnmower?
Well, I really wasn't. Well, yeah, I would pay them per chore.
Okay,
And
but
it's
this is good. You gave them incentive and they actually took it.
well, the lawnmower had it had cruise control. That's why they liked it.
It was a
It
toy.
was a big
I
toy.
see. I see. Okay, so you brought up an excellent point. Step parenting.
Mhm.
That's a tough one. That is a real tough one. Um, I think that, first of all, a lot of conversation has to happen before you get married. If you have
Mhm.
children and you're bringing in a step parent,
Mhm.
uh, hopefully before you get married, the step parent and the children will get along.
Mhm.
Hopefully. Oh my God, if they don't, what do you do?
Mhm.
What do you do if you really love this other person and they're good and the children just aren't there yet? Well, maybe you have to wait
Mhm.
before you get married. You could still see each other, but maybe you have to wait. I think that's interesting what you said, Maryann, about when it comes to discipline, I'll be the one to discipline. My initial reaction is, God, that was smart, because I don't know if I was a step parent, if I would even want to discipline, if I would even want to put myself in that position, because there's so much blowback you can get. What are you
Mhm.
talking about? You're not my parent. Why should I listen to you? You know,
Mhm.
there's that.
Mhm.
And but wait a minute. My dad, let's just say
Mhm.
your new husband is the step parent. But wait a minute, my real dad doesn't do this. Why are you? I'm going to
Mhm.
do what my real dad tells me. You know, there's a lot of that can
Mhm.
happen. So was that beneficial that you did that? Did it keep things calm?
Oh, yes, it did. And all my husband ever really said was, "Will you listen to your mother?" That's really all he ever said to them.
Such a great out. Such a great thing to say, to be given permission to say that.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because I personally hate discipline.
Oh, yes.
I hate being the one to discipline. I
Mhm.
hate it. I hate it with my cats.
Mhm. Mhm.
I mean, I just don't like discipline. Just, I want everybody to be on their best behavior.
Mhm.
So unrealistic. So
Mhm.
ergo why I'm not a parent, but I'm a great aunt because I don't have to
Yeah,
discipline. I
right.
stopped babysitting when I was a kid. At one point, I'm like, I don't want to do this. I don't want
Mhm.
to be in charge of children. It's
Mhm.
way too hard.
Mhm.
I'll
Mhm.
do other things to earn a living. I give people so much credit for being parents.
Mhm.
I just do. I don't know how parents, Maryann, can go through divorce and parent at the same time
Mhm.
and be expected to say wonderful things about their soon to be former spouse. I just can't imagine a more difficult situation. So hats off to everybody who does it.
Mhm.
What I have found in my practice from people who have children and when they come in are really nice to one another. This is how I learned about the emotional divorce before the legal divorce, if
Mhm.
you have that kind of time. So the emotional divorce is we realize we're not going to be happy if we continue in this marriage.
Mhm.
So there's that talk. Then there's, okay, when do we want to file? But in between that talk and when do we want to file, I think people need to take time to unwind
Mhm.
the relationship, to go through the grief stages, to, may I say, forgive and apologize. So, in the stages of grief, there are 7 stages of grief in divorce.
Mhm.
There are 5 stages of grief in death. So Elizabeth Kubler-Ross,
Mhm.
the psychologist who created the 5 stages of grief, she was from one of the Scandinavian countries. There are 5. There are 2 more for divorce because in death, that person's no longer around. You're grieving. But in divorce, that person's still around.
Mhm.
So you're actually grieving the relationship. And if you have children, you've got to still deal with that other person. So you need to really work through these emotions of grief, of anger, of bitterness, of denial, of blame,
Mhm.
and then go on to the realization of forgiveness,
Mhm.
because you have to get rid of that poison, that anger in your system. It has to go somewhere so you can think and be on your best. And then apology. I mean, look, sometimes in some relationships, it's one person's fault if they lived a double life, if
Mhm.
they were always cheating. Maybe it's mostly one person's fault. But, as I'm saying this, I'm thinking, well, maybe there was something that drove them to cheat. Maybe there was no sex. I mean, if there's no sex, the other person is going to find it somewhere else. It's just
Mhm.
going to happen. You need to include it in your relationship once you have kids. But you have to look at the mirror of self-reflection, and you have to say, okay, what could I have done differently? Not only to reconcile that it's a two-way street in a marriage, but to set you up for your next relationship. What
Mhm.
can you do to improve? Maybe you did something that, if you could change that, would bring you a much better result the next time around.
Mhm.
So most people don't do this. They don't go through the emotional divorce first. And here's how we all know why. The statistics in the United States are 50% of first marriages end in divorce, 60% of second marriages, and 70% of third marriages end in divorce. And why is that? Because you haven't processed the first relationship properly.
Mhm.
You don't know where your red flags are. What you need to do to either improve you, and then also recognize that you might be marrying the same person again.
Mhm.
And you have to spend time picking out a person that might be a little different than the person you just left. So I'm going to ask you, not to put you on the hot seat, but you do have the microphone.
Ah.
Maryann, how long was it between your divorce and your marriage? How did that work for you?
Well, I dated around, and I did not get married until 7 years after our divorce.
Oh, that was a good amount of time.
Mhm. Mhm.
And when you were dating, were you feeling really looking for that combination of traits in that new person, that next person, that was what you needed?
I was looking for new traits. Like, for instance, if I was dating a guy that just had explosive anger at you, he was out the door. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, I did 10 years of that. I'm not doing that again. It's over. I'm not entertaining that.
Yes. 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 Yeah, that's a great amount of time to
Mhm.
wait and to explore. So that's good. But you've also heard of people who start dating while the divorce is going on. I
Mhm.
mean, they're not bad people, but can you chill out just a little bit? Or maybe you already had a relationship and this is why you're getting divorced. Okay, that's one thing.
Mhm.
But if you didn't, and and it's just an internal issue within the marriage that didn't work, it's not that there are other people on board ready to come in. And as you're filing for divorce and working your way through it, you're on the dating sites, people are introducing you, because you even see on these reality shows
Mhm.
where divorce is at an all-time high. Come on, it's time to get back out. No, it's not.
Mm-mm.
No, it's
Mm-mm.
not. It's time to breathe.
Mhm.
Maybe go to some goat yoga classes,
Right.
and get yourself reoriented. No, it's not. Knock it off. And I
Mhm.
think people say that so that that fills the void of the
Mhm.
relationship that's leaving. Well, voids are good.
Mhm.
There's nothing wrong with a void. Let
Right.
it be that way. Let it be calm. Think. Um, yeah, just
Yeah.
spend some time by yourself.
Mhm.
It's very educational to spend some time by yourself, especially if you went from living with your parents to getting married and having children. You've never had a time to grow up an adult on your own. And there are a
Mhm.
lot of people like that. You need that time.
Yes. Oh, most
Or
definitely.
yeah, or even you went to college, you met somebody in college, you're both working, but you're living together. You still haven't had the time to really live on your own. So
Mhm.
I think people need to get to know themselves better before they get into another relationship. And even if for some reason when you were least expecting it, you met somebody who really made you happy, you don't have to love bomb each other. You can take your time.
Mhm. And if you've been through such a bad marriage for X amount of years, you start to catch on to what you don't want when you start looking for your, at least I hope people do. Some people don't. Like you said, they'll start looking for what they were just in. And again, I bring up Oprah because she had Ilyana Van Zant on.
Absolutely.
And
She had a tough marriage, tough divorce, right?
that episode made me want to get a divorce. That actually helped me because Ilyana Van Zant said, if you see crazy coming down the street and you're on the same side, you cross the street and go the other way.
That's who said that. I thought that was another Maya Angelou quote. I am so happy you said this.
Oh,
That was Ian Van Zant who said that.
mhm. Oh, that
Nothing
changed my
personal.
life. Yes, it changed my life. And it's like, I knew what to do then. Because I had just sat around for years like, gee, do I get a divorce? I've never done that before. It's hard to do for people when they don't even have a support system.
Right. Right. And so was there ever divorce in the family of origin for you?
Oh, yes, I had an uncle constantly getting divorced and cheating on his wives, and, we always have that one uncle, right, you know?
The fun
Um,
wait a minute, Maryann, the fun uncle?
he wasn't fun, no, I
Oh,
steered clear of him, he was not a nice person,
dang.
you know?
Yeah,
Um, but it was okay for him to get divorced, but if
right.
one of us got divorced, oh, no, no, no.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. No, I mean, the realization that there needs to be a divorce is a really big realization.
Mhm,
And it's scary. It's, oh, shoot, but this happens to other people. And now
mhm,
it's actually happening to me. As bad as the relationship is, oh my gosh, it's really happening to me. What do I do? I don't want to be a statistic. I don't want to be
mhm,
what I see on TV. I don't want to be my next door neighbors.
mhm,
It's all of that, right?
right, and I didn't wanna put my kids through that, but
Mm.
I was coming out of the grocery store with my oldest, she was about 6 at that time, and she goes, "But mommy, you don't have to get a divorce." And I said, "Listen, I would never ask you to stay with a man that does not treat you right. Please don't ask it of me."
Wow.
And I
Uh,
also got her into a group in grade school, it's called Rainbows, where they would talk about, like, if a child had a deceased parent or going through a divorce, they would work with the kids to get them through that. And the
right.
principal had told me that, she did an excellent job. She, came through this and came to accept it.
Okay. But 6 years old, that's
Mhm,
interesting. That, well, first of all, obviously a kid does not want their parents to break up
mhm,
unless it's horrible in the home. And
mhm,
even then some fight against it, right? The devil
mhm.
you know is better than the devil you don't know. So change
Right.
the situation and not knowing what the future brings is scarier, but honestly, it can't be worse than a bad relationship. The future just can't be. So I remember my sister when it was time for her to get divorced. Now, we knew that he wasn't the right person for her, but she didn't see it. And you got to let people make their own decisions. They had 3 kids. The kids, I think, were 3, 5, and 7 when they got divorced. And I was very close to all 3 of them. When the 3-year-old was a 30-year-old, I said to him, that's when I started in the divorce business. I said to him, do you remember anything about your parents' divorce or what it was like in the house when both parents were there? He said, oh, yes. Oh, yes, I do. He said, and I was so happy when it was just my mother in the house. Not that he didn't love his father. He did love his father. The fighting finally stopped. And the tension stops. So sometimes it doesn't even have to be out and out fighting. It can be that low level tension where things don't really get spoken, but you know there's something wrong.
Right.
Just that in and of itself is tough to deal with. And so a 3-year-old knows that there's something wrong. And he said, no, it was the best day when there were 2 different homes and I could see my parents by themselves.
Yes. And it would be nice if parents would just co-parent for the sake of the kids. I have seen other parents do that, or divorced parents do that. It can be done, but their exes are normal functioning people, no personality disorder.
That's right. That's right. When you're co-parenting with somebody that has anything in the way of personality disorders, boy, you really have to learn communication techniques. You have to learn how not to engage in arguments. You have to never criticize, ever criticize the other parent. And you just have to get good. And I'm going to say Bill Eddy again. I'm going to say his books teach you how to communicate with people that have personality disorders. Because you really have to dodge arguments with them. You just can't do it. It's not worth it. You'll never win.
Right.
And so don't think you will. The winning comes in knowing how to communicate to keep everything calm. That's the winning. But why should I do that? That's not fair. I'm always the one. Because you have to be. There's no fair about this. There's an issue here, and it's not going away. And your children are going to be collateral damage. And so for them, you have to figure out a way to not let any situation be combustible. And I was talking to somebody, I was interviewing somebody the other day, and this thing about best interest of the child is such a wonderful phrase. And I said, but how do you make it happen? I mean, you're in the middle of your own turmoil as a parent. How do you deal with the other parent and do the best interest of the child? Can we give me an example of what this looks like? And she said, okay, I'll give you an example. Let's just say you feel the other parent is constantly pulling the rug out from underneath you. You have your schedule. Pickup time is 3 o'clock on Friday, return Monday, as an example. And constantly he or she wants to change that 3 o'clock pickup time. And so then the deal would be, okay, let's just say it's the morning of the day of pickup and you get a text, hey, can I come at 1 o'clock instead of 3 o'clock? I'd like to take the kids to this event. It starts earlier. The thing to ask yourself is, how do you think your kids will feel about leaving earlier to go to this event that starts earlier? Oh, well, the kids would love it, of course. That's the reason to say yes. That's the
Definitely.
only way you need to look at it.
Right.
How will this make the children feel?
Right.
If the reverse happens, you know what? I was supposed to pick the kids up at 3. Something just came up. I may not even get to you until 7 or
Mhm.
8 tonight.
Mhm.
What do you do in that case?
Mhm.
You know, more than likely that this will or has happened. There may
Mhm.
be a pattern. You know, going into the co-parenting, that you're dealing with somebody. If they're a narcissist, they're always going to change the goal line. That's what narcissists do. In order to stay in control, a narcissist will shift the goalpost.
Mhm.
And you have to get good at doing something like this. I understand that something came up, and of course, you know, I always want to be flexible for you. But unfortunately, I already have plans for that night.
Mhm.
So why don't we just look at another day? Why don't we just assume I'm going to keep the kid? No, I have plans. Wait a minute, I set it up differently. But I have plans that night. You have to be ready to call in a babysitter.
Mhm.
You have to be ready because you're not going to win this argument. What
Right.
you don't want to do is get an argument. What you do want to do is live your own life.
Mhm.
So if I have plans, please, you want to go and do the plans, but you need to have a third person that you can call, or 2 people that you can call. If the kids require babysitters, you have to have somebody you can call at the last minute, knowing that this can happen, so that you can live your life. That's
Right.
reality. That's just
Mhm.
reality. Do you agree? What do you
Uh,
think?
oh, no, I agree. I agree. And
Okay.
I have a friend who had been divorced, and she had a discipline problem that she needed her co-parent to come over and discipline. And he brought his girlfriend to the door as well. So he started talking to his ex-wife. The girlfriend started chiming in saying, "Well, I wouldn't do that. This should be done." He actually looked at his girlfriend and said, "This is between me and her. Stay out of it." And so they
That's so
can
cool.
yeah, and they continued to talk. It got resolved, but he had the guts, and I totally respect him for saying that,
Wow.
you know?
Wow. Yes. That's amazing.
Yes, and
That is
some people can't.
wonderful.
Right.
Well, okay. Now let's just say it happened differently. Let's
Mhm.
put the shoe on the other foot, because this can happen too. Girlfriends or new wives can feel ownership in
Mhm.
the spouse with the kids that has the stepkids. And so let's just say it happened differently, and the girlfriend started chiming in, and now he's listening to the girlfriend. What does biological mom do in this case? Well, biological mom can maybe listen, just to let girlfriend say something, and just say, I really appreciate your interest in the children. I really appreciate your interest in the situation. I would feel more comfortable if we could do this together. Their dad and I could do this together. Would that,
Mhm.
if you don't mind, I just would love that. Maybe something like that. Just be gracious about it,
Mhm.
you know, because that's a tough situation. That's great, the example that you gave.
Mhm.
But if it's turned around, which it easily can do if dad has remarried,
Mhm.
now stepmom does actually and can actually feel ownership, especially if it's a volatile situation. A volatile,
Right.
uh, yeah, there can only be 2 decision makers, mom and dad.
Right.
Can't be
Right.
more. Can't be more.
Mm-mm. Because if that happens, then that leads down a very destructive path, and it's not good for the kids.
It's not good for the kids unless it's a kind of a Norman Rockwell situation
Right.
in which everybody gets along. And
Mhm.
then maybe that's really good. So I was talking to this woman who was a divorce coach, and she just had the Norman Rockwell moment. They had 7 children, some
Mhm.
biological, some adopted. They had a fairly long relationship, but they knew it was time to transition out of the marriage. And he got remarried fairly close to the divorce, and he's still married. But she, the divorce coach, was so fascinated with the divorce process that she said, I want to do things really differently. And I want to make this truly an extended family.
Mhm.
They became an extended family to the point where they create Christmas cards together.
Mhm.
Everybody,
Mhm.
all the different parents, all the kids.
Mhm.
I just thought that was incredible. So I
And so
am
rare.
hearing, yeah, I am hearing really cool stories
Mhm.
that are amicable. If both people put their minds to it, you
Mhm.
can create a unique situation that works for everybody.
Mhm.
Because I've always said, just because you're getting divorced doesn't mean you're a criminal, unless you're actually a criminal.
Right,
And
right.
that's why you're getting divorced. But if that's not the case,
Mhm.
and, it's the garden variety, we just can't get along, do
Mhm.
the best you can
Mhm.
at accepting people. Because, I think this was another Maya Angelou quote: everybody tries to do their best, and on some days we fail.
Mhm.
And that's for all of us. We just fail. So we have to extend to other people what we want to have
Mhm.
extended to us, which is forgiveness.
Mhm. Most definitely. I agree. And I also included grandparents. If there was, if I had gotten called into work, I would call up, his mother and say, "Hey, would you like to visit with the kids and take them to an amusement park this afternoon because I got called into work?" And she would do it. I mean, we would just everyone was
How
getting
nice.
along. And I always included I never saw the grandparents as a threat of any kind. They were always there to help.
That's great. No,
Mhm.
that really is great. Boy, to have extended families is so wonderful, because I hear
Mhm.
so many people when they come in. One person will have family who lives here in Los Angeles, and other people will have families somewhere else, way too far, or
Mhm.
no family,
Mm.
depending on circumstances. And they have to rely on the other parent's family. They just
Mhm.
have to. So stay in good favor with your
Mhm.
former spouse's family,
Mhm.
because you may need them. If you like them, you may need them, right?
Mhm.
So that
Mhm.
was great for you that you had that.
Mhm. Definitely. Well, I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I would like to have you come back on to the podcast if you like.
I would love it. And now you have to come on mine.
Oh, definitely.
You absolutely
Definitely.
have to, because your story is fascinating, and just how it got resolved, and the wonderful life that you're living now.
Mhm.
I think it's a testimony to, okay, it may be really rough, it may be very difficult now. It's not going to be this way forever, especially if you put your mind to it,
Mhm.
and things can get better. So thank you, Maryann. This was an absolute joy and pleasure and an honor
Well,
to be on your
I'm
program.
so glad to have you on, and I'm so sorry I messed up the introduction. I'm
You
so
did
sorry.
not. You were fine. Oh my God, you were fine. If you only knew the times I did too. You were
Oh,
great. Perfect. Perfect.
well,
Perfect.
hey, don't jump off. Slam the Gavel's a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms. I'm your host, Maryann Petri, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption: Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. Please join us again here with Judith Weigle in the future and other guests. Thank you, Judith Weigle. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.